Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, where we highlight Canadian innovators that are changing the game. I'm Sapna Malhotra, your proud Canadian host. The Can Innovate podcast is about providing industry insights from Canadian innovators that are doing it. These innovators share thought leadership, they show us industry insights, and they give us tons of amazing tips. They actually even share their own entrepreneurial tales of successes, failures. Some of them turn out to be serial entrepreneurs. They tell us what works, what doesn't work, and they even give us practical guidance that we can all adopt. So I've incorporated some of these best practices into my own different life and really want to continue to innovate. So let's continue to innovate our own businesses, our lives, and our careers. Hey innovators, before we jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Yoma1993 for this amazing review. Thank you so much. A great listen. Absolutely enjoy listening to the different tales and perspectives of all your guests. The content is well conceptualized. The Anthony Lacavera episode is my favorite, full of Canadian pride and insight into the challenges Canadian businesses face. Great job, Sapna. Well, thank you very much, Yoma1993, for an amazing review. And please keep the reviews coming. As Gary Vee always says, ratings and reviews are my oxygen. And I love hearing from all of our listeners. So whether it's a review, an email, a tweet, a Facebook shout out, an Instagram, please get in contact. I love hearing from all of our listeners from around the world. So now, for this week's episode, boy, do I have a treat for you. And if you are thinking about your financial future, this is an episode you don't want to miss. We are really honored and lucky today. We have Rona Birenbaum, the founder of Caring for Clients, one of Canada's first fee-for-service financial planning firm. She was also recognized as a Wealth Professional Women of Influence in 2017, a financial columnist for the Medico Post, an expert media resource on personal finance, and now a co-founder at Viviplan, the winner of the 2017 Ryerson DMZ BMO FinTech Accelerator. Did I miss anything in that intro?
I don't think so. At least that's what I want people to hear.
So how did you come up with this amazing idea about Viviplan?
Really, what has come out of is my lifelong desire to help people. And I ended up in financial services, and I've been trying to help people get the most out of their lives for years and for decades, really. And I've done a good job of that and have built a very successful fee-only financial planning practice. And what happened is, over the last few years, the demand for our services has outstripped our capacity. I've hired, I've expanded, and the calls keep coming in. So we know we're doing something right. The challenge is scaling the kind of service and advice that we deliver. And I was lucky enough to be contacted last year by a fellow by the name of Seon, and he's a graduate of the computer science engineering program at U of T, and he was looking for a project. And being the smart guy that he is, he knows that the best businesses come out of solving a major consumer problem or business problem. And so when we met, he asked me, what is the biggest challenge in your business today? And my answer at the time was capacity. We've got more people that want the advice that we give, and we just don't have sufficient time and resources to deliver it. And so if there was a way, I said to him, Seon, that we could use technology and the power of technology to scale what we do, to reach more Canadians more broadly, cost effectively, time effectively, then we should get to know each other a lot better. And we were both very aligned in that he is a very giving, helping kind of nature, and the idea that we could be building something that can actually have societal impact at an individual level and at a national level was really exciting for both of us. And it all started in January of this year.
That's amazing. It's truly remarkable because you now have this award, so you're really being recognized out there. So what exactly is it? So from a customer perspective, what would that experience look like?
So what's unique about Viviplan is the fact that it is a place where Canadians can go to get comprehensive, unbiased, purely objective financial advice that touches all aspects of their lives. Canadians are starving for help and direction in making very important decisions on a daily basis that are going to have major impacts down the road. And traditionally, the primary way for them to get any kind of financial advice is by dealing with financial institutions whose business model is built on the sale of products. So there's inherently a conflict between the objectives of the financial institution and the needs of the client, where the advice is almost like you'll get the advice, but you got to buy this insurance or this investment product. So what Viviplan offers is a way for Canadians to get that pure advice that isn't motivated to sell them anything and is only driven by how effectively that advice is going to get them the things they want out of life. And interestingly enough, a lot of people actually haven't gone through that very defined process of documenting what they want to have out of life, both today and in the future. And that exercise alone is one of the most valuable parts of the process. And so Viviplan, the technology side of it, is using an online platform for people, for consumers, to actually provide us with the information that we need to build that life plan, and interacting with those users using technology, whether it's a virtual meeting or email or messaging, et cetera, et cetera. So by stripping away a lot of the time that it takes to actually collect information, meet with people, et cetera, we're able to bring down the cost of the service as well as make it more convenient for people to access.
So that's interesting. So basically you're helping us build a life plan. So you don't sell any of the banking actual products. So I would have a plan and I can go shop around now that I know where my vision is going. Is that kind of how it works?
That's exactly it. And that's the way, my traditional business has always run. So at Caring for Clients, people have come to us. They paid a flat fee to get the advice. And you see, the thing is if they've got investments and they've got, high cost debt, we're going to be the first people that are going to say, take those investments and pay down the debt. Now, coming from a financial institution standpoint, if I was working for a large financial institution, frankly, I would be better off if you kept your investments and kept your debt. By eliminating both of those things, we're actually undermining profits of financial institutions to the benefit of Canadians. So here, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, these are the things that are actually going to move you closer. And that could be eliminating products. Certainly, there are purchases and investments and insurance and those things that have to round out a plan. And in that case, what we're doing is we're giving the specific objective recommendations of what they need. And then, yes, they can go to their existing investment advisor. They can do it themselves if they're so inclined. There are all sorts of robo-advisors available now on the investment management side of things. And with insurance, there are a lot of places that people can go to implement plans. And we're building into Viviplan a resource database so people can actually access vetted, trustworthy professionals in a range of fields. But for now, we're allowing our clients to actually go to these professionals fully informed and empowered, knowing what it is that's in their best interest and not being at risk of being sold something that they just don't need.
Got it. So when you say about building the life plan, so that's like a 360-degree view, mm-hmm. Does that also include, so that's financial planning, budgeting, does that also include estate planning and tax planning?
Yes. One of the most important, I think, distinguishing factors of what we do here is that our planning is tax sensitive. And in order for it to be tax sensitive, it needs to be very detailed and very robust. And so, behind every year of our planning, there is a tax return being run, and we're able to evaluate whether one approach or another is more tax effective than another. On the estate planning side of things, that is actually the foundational element of a financial plan. And I would say the majority of individuals that come to us do not have up-to-date wills or powers of attorney. And really, many of them don't understand why those documents are important. So we actually educate them on what they need to know, how they would get those in place, and how to actually structure them so that their, desires play out the way they would imagine, with the least amount of conflict, the least amount of tax. And because, I'm glad you brought up tax. We are, a highly taxed country. And so we don't want to pay any more tax than we're absolutely obligated to. And finding ways to structure one's affairs tax optimally is one of the really core ways you can build wealth over time.
No, so that's fantastic. So if I'm planning, so I'm trying to think out loud here. So if I'm planning to retire and I'm going to be a snowbird, and for our listeners out there that are not familiar with snowbird, it's a concept where Canadians live in Florida or someplace warm for about 3 to 6 months a year when it gets cold in Toronto. So if I'm flying from Toronto to Florida in the USA, would you be able to help me with that type of planning as well? Because there is implications.
Oh, most definitely. There are many implications, and I'll give you an example of a few of them. One has to be careful to maintain their eligibility for health coverage here in this country, because if you spend too much time in the US, you're going to put yourself offside from a healthcare standpoint here in Canada. If you own investments or real estate in the US, there are estate tax considerations to take into account. And then there's also currency planning. If you're going to be spending 3 or 6 months a year in the US, you're going to be spending US dollars. So figuring out how much of your total annual budget is going to be spent in US versus Canadian dollars is important so that one can plan a currency conversion strategy. Because, of course, the relationship between the US and Canadian dollar does vary over time. And if you don't plan for that reality, you could find yourself offside and find your costs in the US being, way more than they would have if you hadn't thought about currency in advance.
How does this work? So is this like an online, is it subscription based, a one-time fee?
It always starts with the overall comprehensive plan, which is a flat fee. And so the comprehensive plan is an $800 plan, and that's where we cover everything: the cash flow, the tax planning, the retirement, education funding, estate planning, whatever components make the most sense to any individual client, risk management being one of them as well. Once that's done, the clients get that plan, and they also get a 30-minute phone call or 45 minutes if necessary with myself or any of other certified financial planners to actually walk through the plan so that it is really clear and they understand how it's all been put together and the actions that they need to take to move themselves forward. Beyond that, what we're going to be launching next year is a membership service. And we're getting feedback from our users as to what they would find most valuable. But from our standpoint, what's really, really important is that people actually implement their plans. So it's not good enough to get the great plan and the great strategy if you do nothing with it. It's like going to the doctor. The doctor gives you a whole bunch of great advice to how you're going to be healthier and fitter and stronger and live longer and more fully, and you do nothing with that feedback. So our pleasure is about seeing people actually move forward in their lives financially. And so the membership is there as a way of staying connected to our clients and giving them the reminders and the accountability check-ins that they're going to need to make sure that they actually do what they know is going to be in their best interest. In addition, the membership would give them an annual update, some ongoing financial information and education. And so we're building that out right now. We're asking our early users what they would find most valuable in that kind of subscription service so that we build it for them.
I love that. So who is the actual target audience then?
The wrong answer is everybody. But I do believe so strongly in financial planning that I think that the majority of Canadians that have income to work with should be doing some form of financial planning. However, as a new business, we have to identify what we think our beachhead markets are, and they really fall into two categories. One would be the young professional. They're called millennials these days, but I really like to call them young professionals that are, they're earning a reasonable income right now, maybe $50,000 and up. They are looking at planning their lives. They know they have to take control of their finances because they don't have pension plans anymore. They've got careers that ebb and flow, so there isn't a 40-year career with a company anymore. They may be getting married, wanting to get into the real estate market, and they're really just trying to figure their lives out. So they're one target market, and they're also very tech savvy and very comfortable with online interfaces. And they're really not keen to spend all sorts of time walking to an appointment, making time, they like the virtual experience. The other target market, which I'm very passionate about as well, is the pre-retiree. In my conversations with entrepreneurial mentors and whatnot, there's been a lot of pushback in terms of my belief that pre-retirees are going to take this on big time. And pre-retirees are anybody that's within, I would say, 10 years of retirement. And those individuals, they have a short runway to figure out how they're going to retire, if they can retire, when they can retire, what that's going to look like. And they have a need and a desire for independent, objective advice because they've been served and underserved by the financial services industry all their adult lives. And they want something different. They want to deal with an organization that actually is focused on what they need, not what the organization is trying to sell them. And interestingly enough, Sapna, of all of our new users, it's virtually split down the middle between those young professionals and the pre-retirees. And it's amazing because I get questions. You mean those pre-retirees are actually doing this online thing? They're comfortable dealing with you virtually? And I say, well, yeah, I mean, these people are not one foot into the grave. These people have experience. They've got life experience. They've got business experience. I think in general, the industry, the technology startup world really underestimates the boomers and their willingness and interest in getting engaged in tech-based services.
Well, I love that because I'm not within the 10 years of retirement, but I've started to wonder those type of questions myself about that. How much do I really need to retire, and that estate planning, because those are things you always kind of put on the back burner.
And what I would also say, there's something wonderful that happens when even young people, when they get their act together and they get their will and their risk management plan, and no matter how old you are, when you do this kind of planning exercise, you feel so grown up and like you got your shit together. It is a really empowering feeling, like you've got this. And we love to deliver that feeling.
So this is amazing. So how did you really get this off the ground?
So we started in January, and it was really just me and Seon deciding that we were going to do this, and he can program. So I think it's possible that sometimes the thing that gets in the way of a startup actually creating a business rather than just having an idea is having a co-founder that can make stuff happen in practical terms. So Seon started building our vision right from the get-go. And so while he was building, we were talking to people, testing out the marketplace, building our network of resources, talking through what the value proposition was and who we were going to reach out to, etc. So it was very, very, I think, helpful that it wasn't just the two of us talking about this grand idea and, gee, how are we going to make this happen? And let's network to success. It was actually getting down to doing the work from the word go. And then I would say what was really accelerated our progress was getting into the Ryerson DMZ BMO FinTech Accelerator. The word accelerator is real. Put on your seatbelt and off you go. And that really helped us actually take it to market, which we did, as little as I think it's just almost 2 months ago. And the uptake has been unbelievable.
Well, I love it because for our listeners, the DMZ BMO FinTech Accelerator really helps them expand, and they focus on Canadian fintech startups, and fintech being financial technology startups go through like 4 months of incubation and mentorship. So they get lots of advice and support. So from other like venture capitalists, the VCs, they have other C-levels. They even have a lot of BMO executives. Plus tons of industry research and lots of learning opportunities. So they actually do not just give cash, they actually help you really kind of build out that entire ecosystem to understand, and they give that a full spectrum of support.
And the wonderful thing is, because we had such great traction and we're making such super progress right now, that we're staying on at the DMZ beyond the life of that 4-month accelerator. So we're going to be able to benefit from all of the resources at the DMZ on a go-forward basis. And their platform there is world-class, frankly.
Oh, yeah. They're churning out a lot of really great, innovative ideas. So we've been actually working with them in the background to get a lot of our podcast guys as well, because it's just becoming just a hotspot for innovation itself. And just to be very clear to our listeners that Viviplan actually won first place at the Ryerson DMZ BMO FinTech Accelerator competition, which there were some pretty big names in there too, and exciting. So it's congratulations again on that. That is amazing and beyond belief. So, one of the things that I really liked, and I wanted to just clarify was, you already had an established business with caring for clients. Mm-hmm. You're just taking technology to help you really scale this to be able to offer a lot more broadly and that 360-degree view. Is that correct?
It is, to offer it more broadly and more cost effectively, because fee-only planning, because there's no product behind it and because it's such a comprehensive process, it's expensive. So the majority of Canadians really aren't in the position to pay for that bespoke hands-on service. So they either can't justify the price, well, which is, it can be anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000, or they frankly don't need that level of bespoke service. So the idea is that let's make it not just accessible, but affordable, and put together affordability with comprehensive. So there's a lot of financial planning services out there that are free or very, very low cost. However, they're really only collecting a very small number of data points to provide feedback, whereas we're collecting so much robust information that we're able to give individuals a much more comprehensive education-based solution than anything else in the marketplace. So it really is cost, access, convenience, and objectivity. There has to be at least one company in Canada that Canadians can trust for sound financial advice. And I just don't think Viviplan is the first. It's a bold statement, but I'll say it.
No, that's great. I mean, the fintech industry is changing so much, and it seems like the government is also open to changing this, so it's past the traditional banks. Is that what's exciting you about this industry the most? Is that the government is laxing some of these different protocols that they've had, or they're a bit more open to change?
Well, I think government support is really important. Canada is a highly regulated type of country. And I think that the regulation and the focus comes from a good place. And interestingly enough, I think that the regulators in this country, their moves in the last few years to actually force the disclosure of the cost of advice is actually one of the major triggers that is motivating Canadians to look for alternatives to how they've been getting advice before, because forever they had no idea what they were paying for advice. And as of December 31st, 2016, they started to get statements that said, you paid for advice $10,000. And Canadians were looking at that, or whatever their number was, and saying, holy crap, I haven't talked to the advisor in 3 years. They don't really give me much advice at all. What the heck am I paying for? There's got to be an alternative. And we can thank our regulators and government bodies for that. And then when you couple that with their investment in innovation, I think, looking at those two things, frankly, have made the timing of what we're building so perfect.
No, that's great. So being that you've got all these different things going on, has there been lots of tools and resources that you're able to leverage from the government? Or, I know we've got the DMZ we talked about, or things that you kind of wish that you had as you're building either this or the caring for clients?
That's a really, really good question. I think that the government doesn't top my list in terms of where I would be looking for help. Health, actually, they do a reasonably good job on. But what I would say is that it's really people and organizations and an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem that is going to make or break innovation in this country. I mean, what you're doing right now, Sapna, is a key component of making innovation, real business in this country. So I think more so it's private money. I think it's individual purpose and mission. It's incubators and organizations like DMZ, and there are others out there that have simply decided that this is the difference they're going to make over the next 10 to 15 years. So it's purpose and passion. It's just finding the people and the organizations that have the purpose and passion, and where it's not just about the dollar. And so we're always on the lookout for individuals and organizations that have that impact mindset. And when I find them, those are the people we want to surround ourselves with. I don't know who said the quote, but you are a reflection of the people you surround yourself with. And I think the most important thing that any entrepreneur can do is surround themselves with great people that fill the gaps that they don't have, that provide the emotional support, sometimes the financial support that one needs, that are as focused and determined as they are. That community is key.
In all these different types of activities you've done, has there been I guess there's lots of lessons learned. Is there something you can share with us, or an aha moment?
Yeah, there's been a few. I'll be honest, I didn't anticipate how much work it would be. I know that sounds silly. And building my primary business at Caring for Clients, that has been a huge commitment of time and energy. So if somebody had told me how I would be taking it to the next level, so instead of working 55 hours a week, I'd be working 80 hours a week, I wouldn't have believed it was possible. So what I learned is how self-care is really important. When I started to see what was going to be demanded of me, physically, emotionally, intellectually, I sat and looked at myself in the mirror and said, Rona, you better eat properly, sleep properly, get enough exercise, take care of yourself physically, emotionally, because you're going to need all of your resources to make this happen. And I'll say that light bulb went off for me, I would say about soon after we got into the accelerator, because I could see what was going to happen. I could see what was coming. And I continued to focus on that because I don't think anybody can really do their best work if they're not clear of mind and they're not feeling strong in body. So I would highlight that as something really important. And then in addition, it's really important to get out of your own head and listen to other ideas and other views and other thoughts. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and, the podcasts that I like a lot and that I'll share with your listeners are ones that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. But one of my favorites is Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale. This is one of the most brilliant podcasts. It's very practical in nature, as well as inspiring and incredibly produced. So that's a highlight for me. I can't help but get pumped by Gary Vee. You have to take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I think that he's one of the best motivators and best realists in the entrepreneurial space right now. I also think the HBR IdeaCast, that's the Harvard Business Review IdeaCast, is great. It is really more from well-established companies, but the concepts of working with people and how people work within organizations, I think is really important for founders to get, because one of the things that I've learned from from building my own business and hearing from other successful entrepreneurs is how the people piece is really make or break for an organization's success. Because once you know the idea is great and the market's ready for it and wants it, all it comes down to is execution. And execution is about the people. The founders can only do so much. So understanding how you're going to build your team and how you're going to work with your team and get the most out of them, I think is really key. And then one final one would be philosophize this. It's a little bit intellectual on the philosophy side, but when I'm trying to kind of zone out and tune back into, really what life is about and how it all works, I will sometimes listen to that, and it grounds me.
These are great. And of course, this podcast now, too.
Well, yeah, like
shameless plug. But what about any books? Do you only typically just listen to podcasts, or do you have any books that you recommend or you've been inspired by?
I've never been a heavy reader, quite frankly. And when I read, I fall asleep. It's just something happens to me physiologically. So the podcast showing up has been very helpful to me for that. So I would say I'd rather listen to people, attend conferences, attend presentations. I listen to people as opposed to read.
I get it. You're an audio learner. I'm quite like that these days too. So is there any other advice you could provide to our aspiring or budding Canadian innovators?
I would say one of the things that I think is really important is the idea of being practical. And I guess it's the financial planner in me coming out when I say that. There is a whole culture of entrepreneurship, and it's almost like it's the cool thing to do right now. And there's a little bit of expectation, I think, or hope that you're going to start a company. It's going to be that billion-dollar unicorn, and you're going to be made in the shade. And it really is not as simple as that. And so what I would say is that it takes sometimes longer and it's harder. And therefore, if you can make sure that while you're building your great business, you're not letting go of however you're earning a living now. So keep your side gigs or keep your full-time job and work on your startup evenings and weekends, because you don't want to set yourself so back financially that if it doesn't play out the way you want it to, you're in a really bad situation. In addition, having financial stability while you build a business, it allows you to make better business decisions because you're not at the brink of bankruptcy. So you can be more strategic in your decisions. because you're not so worried about money. So I think just the practicality aspect of it is what I would highlight for sure.
Oh, that's a fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. So do you have, since you juggle so many different things, is there a popular productivity tool that you use to stay on top of everything? Like a Slack or an Evernote?
We use Slack in the business for sure. It's very, very effective. Right now, we're using Trello to actually manage our multiple projects. So we have a board where we post what the status is with our users, our technology, our marketing, our PR, our operations. And so remotely, Seon and I and our marketing person, Chris, we're all updating and keeping each other apprised using Trello. So that's a pretty amazing tool. And I would say those two have been probably the most helpful. And then there's also a service called close.io, which is helping us manage our new clientele, our correspondence with them, our telephones, our email correspondence. It's really great at capturing all of the history that we have with our users, our new clients, our prospective clients, etc. That's a new one that I discovered. And then, so I would say those are the ones that I've been most impressed with as far as tools. And then, you know what I'll also suggest out there in terms of a productivity tool? There's something called the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of it, Sapna?
No, tell me more.
Okay. All right. So the Pomodoro technique is a productivity approach where you identify at the beginning of the day, what are your let's say your 3 core activities that you really have to get done, because we're all very vulnerable to just getting caught up in busy work and attacking things that are easy, you get done quickly. And before you know it, the day's over and those 3 really core things didn't get done. So you start by identifying what your core activities are for the day that are going to move you forward. You could do that on a weekly basis as well, and then break it down to daily. And then what you do is you estimate, now how long is this going to take for me to do? And a Pomodoro is essentially 25 minutes. And you could Google this and you'll see that there's some research that shows that you can really get focused effort in 25 minutes, and beyond 25 minutes, your productivity or your effectiveness and what you're doing starts to go down and the mind needs a break. So I have an app on my phone. It's called the Pomodoro timer, and I set it. Times me out for 25 minutes. I eliminate all distractions. Nothing can distract me for those 25 minutes, because a couple of distractions and your productivity goes down. And then it tells me to take a 5-minute break. I get up, I walk outside, get some fresh air, whatever it is, and then I'll set it for another 25 minutes. And so if I can identify whether one of my tasks is going to take 3 Pomodoros, I book it in my calendar, I set it, and I stay very focused that way. Yeah, I think if you do that, you'll realize actually how many interruptions you experience, whether it's email, text, telephone, et cetera, and focused energy and activity, you get way more done in way less time if you discipline yourself that way.
Oh, that's a fantastic tip. I mean, I don't actually check my emails until I finish my first core activity, because I get so sidetracked. So this is a great idea. I'm going to definitely download this. So being that you're working like 80 hours a week, is there a favorite Canadian hotspot, hideaway, restaurant, delight, or someplace that you like to kind of gravitate towards?
There is a few things. My favorite restaurant in Toronto, and it happens to be around the corner from my office, is a place called Charisma, Carisma. And it's a wonderful Italian restaurant. What I love about it is that, first of all, the food's great. The service is awesome. The tables are not cheek by jowl. I don't know if anybody knows that expression, but essentially you can have a conversation with someone, business or personal, and the person at the next table isn't going to hear you. And the music isn't too loud, so you can hear each other. So I think it's that so many restaurants these days they're either really loud or feel like you can't have a private conversation. For me, this is a bit of a flashback to the great restaurants of the 80s. And it's on King near Yonge, and I highly, highly recommend it. And then the other thing that I love to do in this city, because heck, we're in Toronto, one of the best theater cities in the world. So anybody out there not in Toronto or not in Canada, come and visit. You'll get food. You'll get unbelievable theater. Second really only to New York, as far as I'm concerned. So I subscribe to the Mirvish Theater subscription. And so on Sunday, I'm going to a play. And I get inspired and I get carried away into another world by live theater. And there's pretty well no better place in Canada to experience live theater than here in Toronto.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what's your favorite play so far?
Oh my gosh, my favorite play. Oh my gosh. I'll tell you, I'm really excited of what's coming up I'm going to get to see Come From Away in the spring. I haven't seen it. I didn't see it when it first came around. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a Canadian story that's getting global recognition. And so I'm going to be really proud to be sitting in the theater when I watch it that day. But I've been going to the theater. I can thank my parents. I've been going to the theater since I was a kid. So if you want to know what my favorite play is, I was 9 years old, and Little Orphan Annie was playing at the O'Keefe Center. And when I saw that, I thought I was going to be a Broadway star after I saw that. And I loved it so much that I actually recruited my friends in grade 5, and we put it on for the school. And there I was getting to act out my role of Little Orphan Annie. And ever since that play, I've been absolutely entranced by theater, particularly musicals. And I always wanted to be on the stage. So I guess I'm going to be on the business stage now, not on the theater stage. It works for me. It's fine.
Oh, that's fantastic. And being that you're going to be on the business stage, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, the easiest way to reach me is Rona, R-O-N-A, at Viviplan.com, VIVIplan.com. Love to have people reach out, tell us what they think about what we're doing, how we can help them, and just connect with people that are building businesses and grow the community and expand the reach of what we're doing, because the purpose is really goes well beyond a startup concept. It really is enhancing Canadians' lives and in doing so, our society as a whole.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rona, for being with us. This was really informative.
You're welcome. I really, really appreciate the invitation, Sapna, and I'm excited in following all of what you're doing in the future because you're a change maker yourself.
Thank you. Cheers. Hey, innovators, thank you so much for joining us this week. I truly appreciate everyone's time. I would love to hear from you. So send me an email, a tweet, message on Facebook, send us an Instagram. I would love to hear it. Reach out. And of course, always putting out a call to action for ratings and reviews. As Gary Vee says, ratings and reviews are my oxygen. So leave a review and I'll be sure to read them out. And of course, share the podcast with your friends and family and nominate a Canadian innovator. Remember, this is our podcast and I look forward to chatting with you next week.